closet late at night, and that little creaking sound, and you think you see a shadow in the corner. Yeah, that's me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Wrestle Horror. And hello, listeners and viewers. We are back, Wrestle Horror Podcast, and this time we've got a special guest host that's going to be with us. His name is John Orlando. He's got a little bit of wrestling knowledge, and I think it's a little more than that, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him. John, how are you?
I'm doing well, Meat Hook Jim. I'm doing well. How are you this afternoon?
Absolutely awesome. Looking forward to getting this podcast off the ground, and glad you could be a part of it.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you guys gave me the opportunity to be a part of it. I'm very excited for it. Anytime I get a chance to talk about wrestling, which I've been passionate about since I've been a little kid, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I love doing it, and so I'm looking forward to it over the next several weeks, months, et cetera, sharing some of the knowledge and stories and input and advice and opinions and insights and all that stuff here at Wrestle Horror Podcast.
And from what I understand, I haven't known you that long. Donnie's known you a little bit longer than me. But you've been it, you've done it, you've seen it. You are the play-by-play man for New Ohio Wrestling. What can we expect out of some of your segments?
Wow. You know what? I thought this morning while I was drinking coffee and having my breakfast, it's been 17 years that I've been doing this. Because it was February of 2002 when I got the opportunity with Fire and Ice Wrestling to come aboard and be the ring announcer. And it just doesn't seem that like it seems like it's been a while, but 17 years, it just blows my mind. So, I bring a lot of knowledge of things that I've seen, things that, I've been able to do. I don't think that there's too many people that know, but for a while, for about a year or two, Jeff Cannon asked for me to help out booking a little bit of OCW. So I have a little bit of knowledge in that aspect of things. Which I thoroughly enjoyed doing. I really did. So I think that I bring that amount of knowledge. And again, I've been a fan for 30 some odd years. So I've seen a lot of wrestling at various different levels. So whatever the topic, I think I got something I can chime in with.
Well, let me ask you this, John. What got you interested in pro wrestling?
I remember it vividly. One Saturday afternoon, I had come in to my house, and my dad and I were working on a little project. I probably working out in the yard or something. I can't remember exactly what we were working on, but he decided to have lunch. And so I got a sandwich. I sat down in front of the TV, and I turned it on, and it was Worldwide Wrestling, and it was Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer absolutely kicking the daylights out of Tully Blanchard, and I was captivated by it. And it was literally the last
almost all the time with him, so watching and learning. Got in the ring a couple times. Roadblock, one of the
we'll have the tape machines rolling, we'll see you next week, fans.
Yes,
I was fascinated by this lunatic that was literally like backdrops, body slam, hip toss, and Tully Blanchard rolled out of the ring, went to the interview area and just started ranting and raving about Buzz Sawyer, and then they ended it. But I was fascinated by it. I was like, I have to see more of this, because as a kid, that was like a real life comic book. And as a kid, I was always reading, especially if it was a G.I. Joe or Masters of the Universe comic book that tied into the toys. I was reading comics. So for me, it was a live action comic book. And shortly thereafter was the big explosion of Hulk Hogan and WrestleMania and,
right,
and all that. But I just was fascinated, and I shared the story, and it is true. The best thing that ever happened to my house as a young kid was the opportunity. I had earned enough money to buy a VCR, because my parents were old school. So in the summertime, it was like, get your ass outside. You're not sitting in front of this TV watching wrestling. Get out. And then it was argument after argument. But Mom, I want to get out, So the opportunity to save that money, which was a couple $100, but it was a big deal for me then, 8 or 9 years old, and getting a VCR and being able to tape that so we could stop arguing, my parents and I, it was, honestly, it was the best thing that ever happened to my household.
You brought up some great memories. Buzz Sawyer, the Mid-Atlantic territories, all the Jim Crockett stuff, Tully Blanchard. Of course, his daughter Tessa Blanchard is making it big now and Impact and some of the indie scene. I think she even made an appearance on WWE during the Mae Young Classic.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, I think it was last year. I don't think it was this past one. I think it was the one before that.
Yeah, but you bringing up some old memories because, as I told Donnie and during my intro, I grew up in Florida, so it was Florida Championship Wrestling, Georgia Championship Wrestling, WCCW, the Von Erichs, Mid-South, all those great Crockett promotions and Watts promotions. It was
and
great.
Growing up for me, there was an independent television station that was what they catered to Saturdays and Sundays. Like I can remember the schedule. In fact, I just talked about this with another wrestling podcast, like not on air, like off air. They had Saturdays at 4:00 was AWA. At 10 o'clock on Saturday nights was World Class. On Tuesday nights at 10, they had the old it was ICW, which was like Jumpin' Joe Savoldi and Ray Odyssey and Tommy Dreamer, like a very young Tommy Dreamer. That was on at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. Thursdays at 10 o'clock was UWF, Bill Watts' UWF.
Yeah.
And then on Sundays at noon on the same channel, they had Wrestling Challenge. So, like, I was glued to watching all of it, even some of the stuff that wasn't good, because ICW really was not very good wrestling. Now I know that, but back in the day, I was like, oh, this was awesome. Jumpin' Joe Savoldi and all these guys. So, so, I mean, for me, I was a world-class guy. I loved World Class, I think, because even though I was a young kid, when I watched Superstars of Wrestling, there was a part of me that said, this guy named Jim Evans is not beating Hercules Hernandez. There's no way. There's no way, And so while I still enjoyed it and I still watched it, there was like, that wasn't even crossing my mind. Well, World Class, they had like main event matches week in and week out, and it was unpredictable and it was crazy, and and you never knew what was going to happen, and that's what I dug most, with World Class.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, this podcast could go on for hours just talking about old wrestling.
Yes.
As my wife shakes her head, I can see her there. But how did you and Donnie get hooked up?
He was working in FIW in 2002 when I joined. I really, really wanted to do something in wrestling, and after I graduated college and moved here to Columbus, I saw the IWA on public access, Bull Miller's promotion, and so I had decided, well, I'll try to see if I can get involved in something. And I sent a couple of emails to Bull, never heard anything back from the dude. So I don't know if he got them or didn't get them or whatnot. I never actually, in the few times I've talked to him, I never asked him that. I don't know why. Because I guess it just wasn't meant to be. But I got an opportunity. I went down. They did this tryout weekend down at HWA back in the day.
Okay.
Les Thatcher ran it. And over that weekend, I was like, I'm not wrestling. It's just not for me. Like, I can't do this. And again, tip of the hat to all the guys and gals that do it, because I just didn't have the athletic ability to do it. But while talking to Les Thatcher, he said, you have a voice for radio. Have you ever thought about doing something, on the other side of things, ring announcing, TV production and whatnot? And I said, sure. Yeah, but I don't know where to begin. And I remember he told me, he said, just find somewhere to start. You can always move up. And so, lo and behold, some friends that I knew that were living in Youngstown, they got involved in this backyard promotion. And, I know everybody, turns their nose up in that. But it was a place for me to start. It was a place for me to start. It was crappy. Yes, it was stupid. Yes, it was all those things. Because, number one, those guys weren't setting themselves on fire or throwing themselves off rooftops and stuff like that. So it was really bad, really, really bad wrestling. And in fact, I wouldn't even use the term wrestling, but it got me an opportunity to practice. And then within about a year, I had talked to Mark Stone through a happenstance of seeing FIW online and emailing him about, working together and doing some collaborations and whatnot. And I went and met him, and he had said that they had an opening for a ring announcer. And I said, well, I'd like to do that. And so he told me it'd be out. I think it was February. It was the end of February of 2002. I want to say the 23rd or 24th or 25th, somewhere in there. It was out at the old rec center. And so I went out and tried out and got the gig, and that's the first time I met Donny, who, as I've told him this privately, was an intimidating dude. You were intimidating.
Oh, come on.
No, you were, because it's still being a little bit green. I didn't know, how much of this that you see in the ring is, because it's the adage of it's your personality turned up. So
wait, you're talking about Shank Dorsey, who I hated. So let's make this clear. That was not Donnie Hoover that was intimidating you. It was Shank Dorsey, who I
very true, Terry.
hated.
Very true.
Sorry to interrupt, but that's
No. Yeah. I mean, so I was also, I'll be honest too. Country always intimidated me too, because he just was a rough guy in the ring. He carried himself as a rough dude. So in the back, I was always very respectful to him because I wasn't sure, this dude might clean my clock, And so, but yeah, from there, that's how I met Donny, and we were off and running in FIW, and I was with that company till the end. Although at the time, I didn't realize it was going to be such a short run, because I think the company was done in November of 2002. But, Mark even gave me an opportunity to dabble a little bit in creative, which I don't know if a lot of people knew that. It was me, Drew Hansen, and Jeremy Madrox that were helping book a little bit. And I was absolutely probably too readily available for the promoter.
Bless you guys for wanting to do this. I see.
You think you could come over and help me book some matches? Yes, I will be there. And then, but then it became, hey, John, yes, are you doing it? It's 9:30 at night. Yes, I'll come over and help book this next year. You know what I mean? Now in hindsight, I'm like, man, I should have been no, but right. I went, because you're thinking, if I help book here, then the next step is wherever, Ring of Honor, and then before you know it, Vince is calling, and yada yada yada, because that's what you think when you get in the business, right, Donnie? I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely.
You thought Heyman was going to call, right, any moment, or Bischoff or whomever when you started, right?
Yep, I remember I had a couple tryouts with ECW.
Whether you're in the hot world or you're in the wrestling world, it is one family. And that's in both industries. That's one thing I love. If I need something,
on me right up. Yeah, I'm gonna be there. Mm-hmm. And of course, never happened.
But yet, on the other hand, if I may, I think, why would you do it if that wasn't in your mind? If you believe in yourself that you could make it, then I don't know what you're doing in the ring.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Sounds familiar, Jim.
Does it?
Yeah.
So.
I would say if I could throw something in there with John. Yeah, we did. We met in FIW, and that's where it all started, and this and that. And then, as you heard from the last podcast, I walked away from wrestling to start a family and did all that. And then, but I would stay in touch with wrestling, and that's when I noticed that he started showing up in OCW. Jeff Cannon's High Championship Wrestling, and so I'd go to some shows because I was friends with a lot of the guys that worked there. And I'd see him on there, and me and Terry, because Terry, like I said, she used to travel the roads with me and do all the stuff with me. And when he'd be in the ring announcing, and when he would get heckled by the crowd, and he would just play along with the crowd, and he had his isms and stuff he threw out at people. And I just told Terry, I said, I was like, man, John's really come around. I said, he's really getting it. And she was like, yeah. So
couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So years later, when we started New Ohio, we were getting all of our groundwork laid on what we wanted to do. And we were saying, do we want to film everything? And I'm like, absolutely. There's no point doing it if we're not going to film it. And I said, so we're going to need a play-by-play. And I didn't even think about John as a ring announcer. The first thing in my mind is I want John for my play-by-play because he's damn good at it.
And I appreciate that. And I look at it as a challenge.
Try not
Bring
to
it, girl.
Too much, dear. Well, what I do now,
Adam Michaels was the play-by-play guy because he has a background in it. He went to college for it. Mm-hmm. And so I would just kind of be the color guy. But to be honest, I was probably not a very good color guy because I think as a color commentator, you have to have a character. You have to be the heel or the face. And being the neutral guy, it wasn't I don't know if it really worked real well. However, so it's a challenge. I look at it for every show that we do. it's a challenge to try to.
Little bit of spotlight says nothing, Jim. You have no idea. You introduced me to it. Now you're going to pay for it.
Fantastic job, by the way, too.
Absolutely.
With color commentary.
Amazing team you are. You guys you rock it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I was just going to compliment that we do work so well together because we know each other so well, and because we've traveled the roads up and down, and we know how silly we are. We could push each other's buttons, and that helps tremendously. So I was honored with the opportunity to come on board, and with if I can real quick, I get this question quite a bit about Ohio Championship Wrestling. As some of the listeners may or may not know, it's no longer Jeff Cannon's promotion. He sold it off to somebody else.
Right.
They kind of moved headquarters up to the Akron area. And I'm just kind of not really anymore wanting to drive all around Ohio anymore. I mean, at one time, yes, I was on the road all the time. I just gotten to that point in my life where I kind of don't want to do that anymore. And so, that's why I stepped away from Ohio Championship Wrestling. Yes, at times I have popped in up there. And I wish them all the best luck. So many great friends up there still working, and they do a great job, and they put on a great product. But it just kind of, I needed to kind of stick closer to home. And so the opportunity to be with NOW that's based here in Columbus, it was a no-brainer.
Right. Yep. And like another thing, and that was another reason why we're bringing you on board here, just because not only do you have a great knowledge of ring commentary, play-by-play, your history of wrestling knowledge is like, I'm envious of it. Your memory bank, I wish I had it. You take away about 125 chair shots, maybe I would have. But
agreed.
But
yes.
Just like
5 concussions. Yeah.
Just watching some of your interviews, and you'll mention wrestlers I've never even heard of. I'm just like, who the heck is that? And he knows like the whole history.
Knowledge.
Yeah. So that's why I was like, and as we're doing the Wrestle Horror podcast, one of our sections and segments is going to be bringing in wrestlers. That's going to help us train. Yeah, we're going to ask them questions, maybe help us get a little training knowledge, a little education. We're going to get some stories out of them, maybe bust their balls, let them bust our balls, have some fun. And John's just the perfect guy because he does his research. And I know that when we have those wrestlers on, he's going to know everything he needs to know to get the best podcast out of them.
Can I share real quick a story about my preparation? There's another podcast that I know the guys, they do a great job. We were at Wizard World, and they had said, hey, man, do you mind helping us out with doing some interviews? And I was like, sure. And I actually got there early to set up at Wizard World. This was a couple years ago, and I was sitting at the table with my phone out, and I was just jotting down notes, and they came over and they go, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm taking notes. Oh, okay. I'm like, wait, do you guys have like a format that you use or something? They're like, we just kind of, we're going to wing it, but go ahead and do what you got to do. I'm like, okay. So I did. And one of the things that they still joke about to this day is how prepared I was, because Kevin Sorbo was one of the guests that I got to talk to, and he's from Mound, Minnesota. So I just flat out asked him, I go, hey man, growing up in Mound, Minnesota, were you a fan of AWA wrestling? And he goes, yeah, I used to actually work for Vern Gagne on Lake Minnetonka. Like his boat was in the marina that I worked at. I used to work on his boat all the time. I'm like, that's fantastic. And these like, how the hell do you even know that?
Right.
Did research on them.
Yep. That's what I was saying. Yeah. So, and what do you do research, Jim, on the Big Scary Show stuff, or do you guys just kind of wing it?
We do a little bit of research. A lot of the interview stuff is kind of catch as catch can. Very rarely, like I told you, I think I told you off air at one point in time. And John, I know you're familiar with Demon Bunny.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I actually had an interview with them last March on my Big Scary Show podcast that went almost an hour, and it was completely unscripted. It was just off the cuff, the entire thing.
And it was the time of my life.
Yes. As Chris was saying, she adores Rosemary and was just thrilled to be able to speak to her and Allie. But a lot of my interviews are just off the cuff. I mean, I might have a couple of things in the back of my head that have to be asked, but it's really it's really organic.
Nice.
And I think that's it, just from my own perspective with podcasting, is I think that that's what you need to do. I always, when I do an episode of my podcast, like I have an outline of just bullet points that I want to bring up with them, but I don't stick to them. And sometimes things get cut. Sometimes, you know, as we're talking, if something pops up, hey, I'll mention that too, you know.
You two are, you know, as thick as thieves, and, you know, just as much about the business as he does. So if
points, it's more organic, and you got the flexibility to kind of, you know, weave in and out of stories or whatnot.
Right.
Well, you know, we on the Big Scary Show, we do a lot of Halloween and horror stuff, and we've interviewed numerous celebrities, and it's really all, you know, maybe a couple of bullet points, but it's all organic, like I said. And we've got some great material over the past 7 years. So, you know, it was kind of a natural progression. I'm still involved with Big Scary Show. I'm still one of the four co-hosts. But now, you know, I'm a co-host here with the Wrestle Horror, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this as well, because it just brings everything together.
Oh yeah. It's going to be exciting, and I can't wait. And for what we're looking to do now, and like I said, is we're going to be doing, you know, different segments. So John Orlando will definitely be on the wrestling segment, and if there's something with the wrestling promoter segment, he's welcome to join that. I don't think he's going to be on the haunt side, because he's not the haunt scary type of person. That's just not his thing, which is fine. Everybody has their preferences. We might bring him to the dark side one of these days. Who knows?
We have cookies.
But yeah, like I said, it's going to be a great time, and a lot of it's going to be just winging it. That's probably where we'll learn the best stuff. And then a lot of it will be, you know, planned out. So we're just going, like I said, we're just going to go after it and see what happens.
Perfect. So, John, do you have any last minute comments for the listeners and the viewers?
The last words?
Yeah, leave your social media out there. Plug your.
Yeah, sure. Well, you know what? I'll throw out a few social media plugs there and whatnot. First of all, I just say to everybody listening or viewing this, you know, definitely check out every single episode. You know, again, I'm sure as Donnie just mentioned, there's something there for those folks that love horror, and there's stuff there for folks that like wrestling, but give it a try. You know, if you're somebody right now going, well, I love wrestling, but I don't like horror, or vice versa, give it a chance. Give it a chance and see what you like about it before you make that determination that, no, I'm not going to listen to this or that. But nonetheless, for me, I'm on Twitter at PVDMVP. My own personal podcast is called the PVD Cast, which is actually named after my second home, which ended up becoming the place where I came from when it came to wrestling, Providence, Rhode Island. So coming up on episode 200 here in the next few weeks. So I'm working on that one, trying to do something a little extra special for it, but more on that coming up soon. But episodes you can find over at pvdcast.com, or basically wherever you find podcasts. I mean, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, Google Play, even some smaller networks like the Echo Network or Pod Paradise has it. Just basically go to wherever you get podcasts, type in PVDcast. Sometimes you have to throw my name, John Orlando, at the end of it, but it's probably going to be there. So, and check out some of my guests. I have a variety of different guests. I kind of stick to the things I'm passionate about: movies, wrestling, comics, and hockey. So check them out wherever you get podcasts. There you go.
Awesome. We're looking to a lot of great things from you in the future, and we're going to keep moving along, and episode 3 will be coming up soon.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media outlets: Facebook.com/WrestleHorror, Instagram @WrestleHorror, Twitter @WrestleHorror, on our YouTube channel, the Wrestle Horror Channel. Also, you can find us at www.wrestlehorror.com.